No further questions. A motion to open the meeting.
I make a motion that we open the meeting of the Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation for March 12th, 2014.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Welcome to the March 12th, 2014 meeting of the Architectural Board of Review and Historic Preservation. My name is Curtis Highsmith, and I am your chair. I'd like to introduce our panel. Unfortunately, Esther Pastor will not be here this evening. We are awaiting Christina Redding, but we'd like to welcome Ham Hogue, Brian Brady, Zach Studenroth, our historic consultant, our legal counsel, Bo Robinson, and as always, Antoinette, thank you for being here. We're going to start this evening's meeting with signs, and first application sign.
Mr. Chair, first application is Abof's Painting, 31 Hampton Road.
Is the applicant present? Okay, this is the fourth presence before us?
Third.
No, third?
Third, yeah.
Well, there was original and then two. Okay.
Right.
Did we send out a letter for update?
No, not last time.
So can we do that? Yes. Motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn the application of ABOPS at 31 Hampton Road.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next application, please.
Timeless Homes for Contractor sign.
The applicant present? No color rendering. I have a font, but I don't. Website as well as telephone number and address. But there's no specifics of the sign itself. Do you have any issue?
I don't have any issues with it.
I don't either.
You have no issues? Any questions on the application? Motion to approve?
I make a motion that we approve the sign for Timeless Homes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That concludes our sign permits for this evening. First application, historic.
John Aquino, 281 North Main. We have a letter in the file, which you and I reviewed, withdrawing the application for demolition.
Motion to approve applicant's request to withdraw application without prejudice.
I make a motion that we approve the applicant's request to withdraw the application without prejudice for John Aquino, 281 North Main Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next application, please.
Elizabeth Yonke, 483 Hill Street.
Good evening for the applicant, John Bennett, and Will Menier for the project also. He's the project architect. The last time we were here, there was a request made to remove any second-story decks. We did that, but the board wanted revised drawings. So we submitted them some time ago. Will has copies for the board's review in case that there aren't any. You might want to point out. Will.
Any other changes other than the...
No, there were no other changes requested. That was the only request that the board requested. And no, there are no other changes. These were put in the file probably 7, 8, 9, 10 days ago, but we've got them for your review. Well, you might want to show on the appropriate elevation where we made the change requested by the board.
Hi, Will Menier, I'm the architect. Page A11, the rear elevation, the top elevation. You'll see now in the middle of the house there, that is a roofed porch and it's no longer a second floor terrace.
That's facing north, is it?
That faces north, yes.
Faces north.
Ham, you were not here at our last meeting. Why did the dialogue? Were you able to at least read the minutes from our last meeting?
I read the minutes and I looked at the video. I actually didn't have an issue with this porch, but I like it. I like what you've done here.
Okay. If I can recount, from both my memory and having looked at the film or the video, it appeared that Mr. Brady and Mr. Highsmith seemed to be satisfied. Ms. Redding was not sure. So you didn't have 3 votes, which is why you adjourned it. I just very quickly, I think we have a more than full.
I apologize, John, for not being there, but I had a very close friend of mine who had a brain operation. And
there's no don't apologize to me.
The point being is it was a successful one, too.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you. But what you have here is basically removing the deck. Your ridge height is still at 28 feet, or
It's 28.3 feet on the west side of the house, and we dropped it at some of the board members' request to the living quarters above the garage to 27.3. So that's respectively 7 feet and.
Other than your comments on the video and in the minutes, that was about it, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to review very quickly, and then I'll sit down. I think I presented the board with plenty of authority that since there's no express grant of authority to downsize the house, that we're more than entitled to a house of this size. Indeed, it's substantially under the FAR. And to the extent that some of the objectors talked about scale and proportion, this is well under the allowable FAR. I think by about 700 square feet, if not more, maybe even more. Excuse me? And anyway, it's in the record. It's only 70% of the FAR, I believe. The numbers are in the record. So to the extent that even if the board did have some authority to downsize, which I believe it doesn't, and the court has spoken on this, to the extent that you're considering scale and proportion, we did scale it down quite a bit. 7 feet and 8 feet respectively less than the height. About 70% of the FAR sits in the middle of the lot, and we think we've done a very, very sensitive application here, and would ask you to move it along. This has been I think either the 4th or 5th public hearing. So we don't have anything else to add, unless the board has any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any public comment?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. My name is Jeff Bragman, and I represent Ann Pine, who's the next-door neighbor a couple of doors down. I don't have as much to say to you tonight as I did at the last meeting, but I did want to revisit this issue that council again repeated tonight, indicating that you lack the authority to change the size of the house. I think it's completely incorrect, and I wanted to remind the board that Village Code Section 65-5C2 authorizes you to determine the compatibility of this proposed house by, I'm quoting, examining the scale of the proposed new construction in comparison to the property itself, surrounding properties in the neighborhood. Last time I was in front of you, I went through what the meaning of scale is. Essentially, that is a direct authorization of this board to look at the comparative scale and to make adjustments in that scale if it is not compatible with the surrounding properties. And also under Village Code Section 65-5C4, the board also has to consider the visual compatibility of new construction with the surrounding properties. And that word also is based upon a comparison of the new to the existing. So it's clear that the record that you should be looking at but are not looking at is a record of plans and drawings that show some kind of comparison. There is no comparison that this applicant has given you in this record. In fact, the Village Code Section 65-6, 3, and 4 requires that an application to your board contain both elevation drawings, including the relationship to adjacent properties, and perspective drawings, including the relationship to adjacent properties. Again, the code is telling you that the record you're supposed to be looking at is a comparative record that shows not only what's proposed, but what's existing. There's nothing in the record from the applicant that accomplishes that. And this board itself asked for information of that type from this applicant. I believe it was Member Hoag that brought up the possibility that they conduct a balloon test, which I understand is something of a misnomer. What they really do is they put a stake in the ground and photograph a target. The applicant, in response to that, basically told you to take a hike. He said, quote, "There's no need to proceed with any testing because the project's visual compatibility with surrounding properties is beyond dispute." How the applicant could say it was beyond dispute when there's no evidence in the record comparing it to the architecture around it defies common sense, in my opinion. In a later meeting, this time I think Member Ham Hoag was not present, the board had a lengthy discussion about the applicant producing a 3D photograph showing the comparative size of the building. And that was a part of the discussion. You didn't just ask for a three-dimensional rendering. You said you were discussing a 3D rendering that would compare it to what else was there. And in fact, may have been Member Brady that said, you can show us some different angles. You can maneuver with those computer-generated photographs. And instead, the applicant came in with what's often seen in a promotional piece, a typical everyday drawing of what the building will look like. No scale, no distance, no height, no indication of the angle of view, and most importantly, again, no comparative evidence to what was there. In fact, the only thing you have in the record that shows a comparison, a true comparison of the proposed to the existing, is evidence that my office provided, which was a comparison of the living space of all the houses in the neighborhood. Now, those comparisons I did based on the front yard lots. Then I did an average of the backyard flat, I would say the lots behind, the flag lots. We did those separately. Then we averaged them together so that we could give you a true comparison. We also gave you a list of house sizes by Suffolk County tax map and address, and we also gave you the difference between the front houses and the flag lot houses. Those numbers changed based on these new plans that the applicant brought in the last time. So I'm now handing to the clerk 6 copies of each of 3 documents that have updated those that now give you a comparison. In fact, the comparison doesn't really change much. The data that we've had, and this is the only data that you have comparing this house, shows that the square footage of the living space in all the neighborhood houses compared to the proposed house show that the proposed house is 137% larger than the houses on the flag lots, so it's more than double, and it's 88% larger than the existing houses on the front lots. So if you average them together and just look at the average size of houses in that neighborhood, this house is 100% larger than the average house size in the neighborhood. The same comparisons showed that this proposed Farrell house is 35% larger than even the 2 largest houses in the neighborhood, and it's more than 3 times larger than the smallest houses in the neighborhood. And I would suggest to the board tonight that these comparisons, which are the only comparisons so far that you have data for, actual factual data, confirm the comments of your Southampton Village historic consultant, Zach Studenroth, who said that the building was out of scale. Out of scale in this case means too big. And given the fact that this ARB has a direct grant from the Village Board of Trustees, an obligation to compare the comparative scale of the proposed to the existing, it is factually incorrect to say that you can't do anything about it. And given the fact that you're authorized to get any information that you deem necessary to make a decision, it is also, I think, imprudent not to ask this developer to produce comparative elevations and the other drawings that your code requires in every application. He is, given his size and scale, he's well capable of producing that documentation from you, and you should have that before you make a decision. There are 2 aspects in which the house is incompatible, and neither of them are affected by these very minor changes in the height of the house. This house, by our measurements, has an 83-foot long street frontage facade on Hill Street. That is a huge length of proposed house. And the problem isn't that the height is necessarily...
Just for clarification, this is a flag lot.
That's correct. It's a flag lot, but it's still visible. It is still visible from Hill Street.
Just wanted to state the fact that it's not on Hill Street, it's set back from it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, what I meant when I said street front, you're correct. I'm sorry for that. I should have said, I wanted to convey it's the side of the house facing the street. Yes, you are correct. Okay. And it is still visible from Hill Street, of course.
Just wanted to clarify.
Okay, thank you. And what what we're saying is out of scale. It's not merely the height or the fact that now it's about the same height as a house next door to it. It's that it has this very expansive width facing Hill Street, and that produces a much more striking elevation and a much larger appearance of volume. And lowering a short section between the garage and the house by 2 feet does not break up that 83-foot-long run. And in fact, I would suggest to the board, if the board were really concerned about it, as I believe it should be, the solution here is to detach the garage from the house and move it to the back of the lot. That's the pattern of existing development here. That would do a great deal to make this house acceptable. It would really break up that 83-foot-long run, and it would make the architecture of the house on the lot much more fitting with the existing pattern of architecture. That's about all I have for you tonight. We have some additional, I didn't mention to you the other evidence, the only other evidence that you had of scale was the 2 models that we produced, which I think showed tangibly that the proposed Farrell house is twice as big as the Pine House. We have some more models for you. We have some concerned citizens for you. And I just want to end by saying I would like, after we hear everything tonight, I'm asking the board, I guess now I'll have time, to leave the record open so that I can submit these comments that I've made to you in writing. So you have something you can look over and read before you decide.
Thank you. Any more public comment?
Yes. Once again, my name is Barbara Missett, and I'm the neighbor in the lot next door, 471 Hill, to the 483 property. Both properties are in
Closer.
Speak into the microphone,
I'm sorry.
please.
Both properties are in the historic district, as you are aware. I'd like to pass out these because there are some pictures in them for the board, so I'll give them to you to record. And there's a transcription of the parts of your last meeting, or the meeting before, I'm sorry, when you were here.
Okay.
That is highlighted to show what you asked for. So actually, Mr. Bragdon's taken most of what I was going to say away, so we're lucky. But I do have some
That's why
points
you're
that...
paying them.
Exactly. No, Ann's paying him. He said things that
It's even
Ann's
better.
paying him. I just want to show you, we've heard a lot of talk about scale. We've been around the corner a lot on that, and we seem to have... But what I do want to show you, what prompted the second request after the balloon request, was what Farrell submitted, and you all basically disregarded because they said, what use is it? To begin with, it's inaccurate because this cottage was mine. I owned it. It was torn down 1.5 years ago. So this was inaccurate. But more than that, what was presented at the meeting as a result, the one that you missed, was this aerial view. This was supposed to be the 3D perspective.
Right.
Now, it is inaccurate. Number one, this was taken at least 1.5 years ago. When I owned the little cottage, that cottage is no longer there. It was torn down, as were these trees right here in the border.
Mm-hmm.
These trees are no longer. This beautiful umbrella of greenery is not true. And also, you see, it's been superimposed on a winter scene. These are not accurate. And the elevation certainly can't be seen from any other perspective, not even from Hill Street. This is just simply, I'm sorry, I should show.
Barbara, just so you know, I looked at the video, I looked
Yeah.
at the minutes, and I
Yeah.
looked at the file, so
Okay,
you
so
don't
you're-
need to go through all that.
Okay,
unless you-
I'm objecting to these being, they do
Okay.
not do the job of presenting anything from an angle from Hill Street, from the right-of-way. They're supposed to be seen that my right-of-way is in the historic district, and that's part of the mandate as well. And I don't think these should be accepted. They're not 3D. You can't see them from any angle except this sort of fake overhead thing, this drawn-in thing, I do believe. It's not even done with a computer. So I think I can end my story. I'll just show you prove the point. Here's their latest plan. This is the northeast corner. As you can see, this is my property line. This is my property. This is Mr. Preston's, where the cottage used to be. There are 2 little trees here. End of story. The rest are the linden trees that are remaining on my border. And they do not provide that beautiful blanket of whatever. And this is a picture taken today. And this is a picture taken this week. So just to prove the point. And that's it. Thank you very much, and
Thank you.
Thank
I
you,
hope,
Barbara.
you've asked for the perspective, the proper perspective. If you just show us, just prove to us that, you really won't see it from anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more public comments? Please step forward.
My name is Susan Stevenson. I live on Toilsome Lane in the Village. And I missed the previous meeting also, but watched the video today. And I was concerned that Mr. Bennett dismissed the 80 letters from people who live in the village as inappropriate, or I don't know what reason he really had, other than to suggest that you shouldn't be interested in the fact that people who live in the village care deeply about the historic houses in the village and the look of the village. I'm one of them, and I care very deeply about when I'm driving in the village or walking, that it is not being dismantled piece by piece, because you're being asked to not pay attention to the mandate that I think you have. And so I'd just like to be on the record that there are people here who really care about the historic aspects of the village, and that since you are on the board, given the mission to try to help preserve that you take this very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more comments?
My name is John Pine. I live at 449 Hill Street. And I really want to follow up on Susan Stevenson's remarks about the letters. We produced 80 letters at that last meeting, and it was characterized by John Bennett as sort of a Southampton Association, appeal. And I just really, I talked to one of my friends, David Gillespie, who's here, and he was incensed because he said, I'm not even a member of the Southampton Association. I care very much about what you had to, the kind of comments you made, and that sort of denigration is really disrespectful to the effort that went about in producing these letters. Let me give you a little detail about the letters. There are about 83 in total. 30, roughly, are people who live on Hill Street, adjacent to Hill Street, or in the historic district. Range of ages, 30 to 70. I would say average life in Southampton, probably 40 years. 2,500 to 3,000 total years being residents of Southampton. As opposed to perhaps the 5 letters that you received for the applicant. And I think Mr. Pressman, for example, has been a resident here for 2 years. All individual writing were approached by Ann or on an individual basis. They're friends. We have no business relationship with any of these individuals. There are obviously others in Southampton that we could have approached, but we were not comfortable doing so. They all asked the ARB to fulfill their mandate, as prescribed by our lawyer just expressed beautifully moments ago. These are homeowners who have known and enjoyed Southampton in all seasons of the year. These are homeowners who have employed local tradesmen, builders, electricians, plumbers, and painters. These are homeowners who have supported Southampton Village stores. These are homeowners who have contributed to the Parish Art Museum, the Parish Library, the Southampton Hospital, the Fresh Air Home, and many other charities. These are homeowners, many in the high property tax range, who have supported the Southampton School District, the Southampton Police Department, the Southampton Village Fire Department, and all Southampton municipal organizations for many, many years. I believe it is very short-sighted for the ARB to denigrate the opinions of these homeowners, or perhaps our lawyer to have denigrated the opinions of these homeowners, to mock their concern of the Southampton Village, to ignore the reality that these homeowners have carried a large part of the village financial burden and have done so for years, and to turn a blind eye to their rights which they are invested by the village code. I think in closing, I'd say that at the last meeting, I really felt that two members of the board here basically declared open season on the development in the historic district of Southampton. We thought a very spirited case to deny the permit to build this house because the mass and scale of the structure is not in keeping with any other houses in the historic district. It's almost 50%, perhaps even larger than houses that are represented in this district. The ultimate decision that you make will affect the development of Hill Street. Will it be in keeping with the mandate of the historic district, or will the board be swayed by the building lot side which allows this structure? If the board makes this latter decision, it will be clear that the historic district designation will be null and void. Mass and scale as a criteria will be irrelevant, and whether the size affects the view from the street will be challenged. It really will be open season, and all of us who cherish our neighborhood better watch out for the flying bullets.
Have drive-bys? Any more comments, please?
I just make a brief comment. My name's David Gillespie, and I've been in Southampton, well, myself, one way or the other, since 1945. My parents were here long before that. My in-laws have been here since the 19th century, their ancestors. And I just find it unbelievable, frankly, that what is the purpose of having historic preservation and compatibility rules if they can be summarily disregarded, which seems to be what's happening here? I drive up and down Hill Street every single day coming into the village. As I say, I've been here for years and years, and I find it frankly very insulting that somebody would say, as apparently Mr. Bennett has, that, oh, these are just Southampton Association people, they don't know what they're talking about, they just do what they're told. That is not the case, as Mr. Pine pointed out, and, it's, as I've noticed over the years, this village has deteriorated in many, many, many respects. The houses get bigger, the property gets smaller, and this is just a continuation of that. So I just wanted to have my say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is the several times that comment about Southampton Association or any association for that matter. And I think we were very clear at our last meeting, and every time it comes up, we don't care what association you're a part of, what agency you represent. This board is looking at the facts and making a decision based on that. So whether you live on the block or live in the community, everyone has a right to be heard, and everyone's point of view is important. So for the record, let's acknowledge that.
Thank you.
Anything further?
Hi, I'm Dora Frost, and I live at 570 Hampton Road. My family has had a house out here since, I've been coming out here since 1953. And at one point, my family owned a house on Hill Street. So I've been given a couple of things to talk about in terms of Hill Street historically. In the early 1700s, it was called Queen's Road, after the Queen of England. By the mid-1700s, it was called King's Road, after King George. Farm lots along Hill Street were parceled out. The second sons of the original settlers of Southampton, in particular the Culvers, in 1690, after whom Moses Lane is named. other early settlers of Southampton with famous farm lots in this particular area of Hill Street, from Moses to Corrigan, are Howells, Jessops, Jaggers, and Sayers. In 1836, Nathan Sanford bought the farm of W.C. Fields, a whaling captain. It was bought in 1900 by the Corrigans. Mr. Stanford's original farmhouse still stands west of Corrigan Street, and the Corrigans' farmhouse still stands, owned now by Mr. Greer. Moving to the east from the original Corrigan farmhouse is the house of Mrs. Janke. It is the only new house in this section of Hill Street, but it very carefully mimics the house of Mr. and Mrs. Braverman, which was built by Millicent Howell in 1900. The house next east of Mrs. Jankel's house is the house of James Sayre, built in 1830. It was later owned by Edward Howell, the Edward Howell family, ultimately sold to Mark Chappell and Thomas Anderson, its current owners. Behind this house is a studio built at the turn of the century and lived in by William Merritt Chase, while his larger house in Shinnecock Hills was being built by McKim, Mead, and White. Coming back to Hill Street, next east of the Sayre-Anderson house is a house enlarged by 1872 by Peter Howell, the original part being built by Edward Howell in 1856. This is on farmland bought by Ezra Jessup in the 1820s from Jeremiah Culver and brought from the estate of Ebenezer Jessup in 1839 by William Howell. I could go on here with this, but you can get, I think, an idea of the seriousness of this road, this very historic road. So the last house in this area between Corrigan Street and Moses Lane is the house built in 1880 by William Post on land bought by him from Elizabeth Culver. This is now owned by Mr. and Mrs. Gregory Hedberg. The house briefly owned by Mr. Robert Pressman just north of Mrs. Missett's William Merritt Chase studio, though not in the historic district, was historic nonetheless. It was thrown into the dumpster in the middle of December 2013 by recommendation of John Foster, though it was viewed by your board as being of historic note. These houses have been tweaked, the other houses have been tweaked over the years, but remain essentially unchanged over the last 200 to 100 years. This is not a Disneyland historic district. It is not a compromised historic district. It needs to be preserved.
Thank you. Any more comments?
My name is Bruce Bachman. I live at 660 Halsey Neck Lane here in Southampton, and I'd like to comment on this particular application. I'm one of the 83 letter writers, and I wrote it in my own volition, and because this is a subject in which I have great interest, because what I see happening in the neighborhoods here in the village of Southampton. As I had an opportunity to talk with some of the people who have written the letters, I was given some examples of precedents where very large houses have been placed and permitted in neighborhoods. And I decided this last weekend to go take a look for myself to see what the implication was of building a big house in a neighborhood. I took pictures of all the instances which I saw. I was thinking of bringing them in. Then I decided, no, let's keep this easygoing and quick. However, I did note that in every neighborhood that I went to, there were these wonderful old houses. Most of them were cottages. Built in the middle of them was this big, huge house which loomed over them. People in one neighborhood actually had moved out because it was so disturbing. In my own neighborhood, which is down off Halsey Neck, on Meadowmere Lane, or Meadowmere Place, I'm sorry, we've had some huge houses built in. It's been so bad that we are creating I'm not doing it, but the other neighbors are creating a neighborhood association to see if they can stop what's going on. And in all of those situations, and there are many more, which I saw around the village, they could have been stopped by using and applying appropriately, I think, what is the scale provisions which you are supposed to follow. None of these situations so far were in the historic district. However, if this sort of thing moves into the historic district, and particularly on Hill Street, which is sort of the entry to the village for so many people, both residents and non-residents, I think it would be an absolute shame. And I think you really ought to be very, very careful in considering this application, because we don't want to see what happened to the historic district, the disruption of the neighborhoods we've seen throughout the village as a result of very large houses being built in neighborhoods which are predominantly small housed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Any more comments?
My name is Jay Deasing, and I'm the president of the Southampton Association, a resident of the village. And I don't think I have a target on my back, but it feels like it. What I will do first is just give you a copy of our certificate of incorporation and the only email that was sent out to our members relating to this particular application, because suggestion was made that we had no authority to speak about this, that our group had no interest in historic preservation, and that in fact we had manufactured all of these letters. And I think you'll clearly see that that was not the case. What we do is we inform members of the community about issues that are critical, that are relevant, and we ask them to get involved. And I think you can see from the number of letters that you received, people do get involved. And I think it's critical, particularly in this situation where you have the historic district in the oldest English settlement in New York State. And the attorney for the applicant talks about you not having the right to turn this down, that there is an as-of-right statute that would cover this. Clearly, that's not the case. If it were, he wouldn't be here. And if it were, he wouldn't have made any changes to the plan. So I think he's recognizing that this board has the ultimate authority to decide what compatibility means. And it means consistency. It means scale. It means equivalent weighting. And I think what we can probably do to make the decision very simple is to drive up to Pheasant Pond and get a mental picture of some of those houses, and then come back to the historic district and take a look, because that's what you'll be putting there. And the one power that he doesn't mention that you don't have is to take property out of the historic district. And what you'll be doing if you approve this house, even with screening, and perhaps just as badly with screening, is you'll be pulling this property out of the historic district. No one is going to drive by, do you think, Zach, and ask whether this was a 1760 colonial or an 1810 federal? I don't think it's going to happen. And I think that while the applicant may get richer, our village gets poorer. Thank you very much.
Please step forward.
Ann Pine, 449 Hill Street. This is the fifth meeting I've been here, as we all know. I feel like, in a way, we're at the first. I would just like to list some of the things that I think should have happened at the first meeting. I'm sorry if it's repetitive, but I like them stamped and put into the record. Mr. Studenroth, this is regarding visibility from a public road or a right-of-way or a park. This is at the beginning of your code. You cannot approve or disapprove of anything until you decide whether it's visible. Mr. Studenroth, in the second meeting, expressed concern that this new construction would show from Hill Street, especially going west. He was interrupted 3 times by Mr. Highsmith telling him that he was incredulous this would show. Mr. Hogue asked for the balloon test. He said he could not require it. He could only suggest. Village Code states that this is a prerequisite for certificate of approval, whether it's visible. You have not ascertained whether this proposed new construction of Farrell Building Company can be seen from Hill Street or Corrigan Street, which is also a public road. Village Code does not suggest that you ascertain this. It requires it. Could you stamp this for me? Secondly, regarding elevations regarding scale and mass. At the first meeting, Mr. Studenroth said that nothing like this in scale existed in this area of Hill Street. Village code requires that the ARB-HP shall, that's an imperative, it's not like could, consider scale and mass in terms of neighborhood compatibility. No scale is indicated on any of the Farrell Building Company documents that are available to any of us, at the building company, to you, or to me. There's no 1/8 inch equals 1 foot. There's nothing. No linear measurements of width and depth of the house have been provided to the ARB-HP. The scale of the building has not been determined. Does the 5,531 square foot include the garage wing, which appears above ground on a 2-story level? This is a part of scale and mass, and we have had no measurement of this house, the house itself, at all. These facts have not been provided by the Farrell Building Corporation to you. Could you stamp that too for me, please? Regarding elevations demanded in Village Code before application of compatibility can be granted by ARB-HP. Background: at the third meeting, Mr. Hoag and Mr. Highsmith engaged in a dialogue with Farrell Building Company regarding what they would like to see in terms of elevations. None of the criteria they requested were met by the Farrell Building Company. What was presented was a 3-dimensional computer-generated rendering of the new construction with no neighboring structures included in the picture. They also presented an aerial view. We've discussed this. It was what you see from the air, not from eye level, which is why we talk about elevations. And I doubt one of you, I can't, and I live there, could identify structures as being 1 story, 1.5 stories, 2-story, or 2.5 stories from that elevation. The inadequacy of these 3 drawings was pointed out at the 4th meeting. At that meeting, Mr. Highsmith declared they were what he wanted. The ARB-HP has not been provided with necessary elevations to judge scale and mass. This is a provision of Village Code without which they cannot grant a certificate of compatibility. Common sense. This is my common sense. The Farrell Building Corporation Company has not provided this for an obvious reason. They don't want you to see it. This is my common sense. The only things you have are things I have provided. I'm going to enter into the record more specifically tonight. Here is, from Hill Street going west, as Mr. Studenroth suggested, the Janke House, and here is the gap in which this new construction will appear. And I have dotted lines because as you move, it changes place. There is nothing here. This is where the balloon test suggested by Mr. Hoag would have shown very clearly. Mrs. Missett and I both offered to pay for this test on our own. We were denied that. We also offered the Farrell Building Company permission to go on our lots and measure our houses to provide their elevations. Could you stamp that? This is a picture of our house from Hill Street and our barn behind it. This barn is on the precise latitude of the new construction, 2 lots over. This is the Janke House, if you wish to pretend. This is the Farrell construction. I will show you this I've outlined it here, but I have models to show you. I'm not going to unfold this unless you ask me to, but it is what you asked for, the houses on the lots in perspective. I think it would be awkward.
Thank you.
But in other words, I can place my houses on this so you can see them. Once again, this is the Farrell Construction Building house. It is completely massive. It is all on a 2-story level. There is not a single thing except the back porch, which can be elaborated or cut off, is irrelevant. This entire mass is, by my recollections, which I shouldn't have had to do, 83 feet by 54 feet. It is a solid 2-story brick. I've shown this before. This is our house on Hill Street. So without unfolding this, here is its position. Here is the Farrell house. We have one of the largest houses on Hill Street. Here is our barn, as I showed you in the picture, right on the level. As I stated before, historic pattern counts in a historic district. Smaller houses are behind larger houses, barns and cottages. This has been nowhere interrupted on our side of Hill Street, and very little on the other side, which is in the estate section. Here is Mrs. Missett's house, to scale.
You don't have my house in there, too, do you?
Well, where are you? If you're between Moses and Corrigan. Okay, so the picture that I just gave you, if I could, it's too late. It shows that this house, this barn, and you can drive up to Hill Street tomorrow, shows from here. My barn shows from Hill Street, directly behind my house, from this angle. This is the angle Mr. Studenroth was concerned with, not in front of Mrs. Janke's house. He's concerned with this angle and Corrigan Street. Now, just to exchange houses, this is what is coming behind my house. Okay? Now, to me, this is about common sense. I was just in Florida visiting my mother. We all have health problems of people that we love. And she is in a sort of moderate stage of dementia. She had a hip replacement. The doctor came in and said, "Do you know who this is?" And I was standing there. And she said, "Certainly I do." And he said, "Mrs. Sherrill, who is this?" And there was a blank. And she was confused, she was struggling, and she was upset. I don't see that lack of common sense in myself or in these models. And I just think that the application of common sense is, to decry common sense, to make a mockery of it, is a serious moral failing when you see people who have lost their common sense. Now, I have two questions that I would ask. Mr. Brady said, I think at the second meeting, that this house was slightly overscaled for Hill Street. What is being out of scale? Is it 100%? Is it 200%? Is it 5%? This house was reduced by 3%. So it went from being twice as big to the largest house on Hill Street to being 97% as big. What does it mean? What do you all think it means to be not in scale? That's something you haven't answered. I feel strongly it's not to tweak it by a little. It's to make it compatible, make it the same, make it fit. And I also don't think this legal question has been answered at all. What is required of you? That is something maybe Mr. Robinson would opine on. I'm not asking him to. But in my mind, if you can't judge, if you can't reduce the size of a house, which is essentially its scale, unless you throw the whole thing on the ground floor, which is another story. Why doesn't it say in the code that you can only do that if it has a variance or if it doesn't fit the... Why are those words nowhere in the code? If you think you don't have the right to do that, why doesn't it tell you you can't do that if it fits the envelope? And secondly, how do you describe this issue of scale that is in the code? Do you think someone's fingers just had a fantasy flight and then it's backed up in the next part of the code saying what you need to have to determine scale? Do you think this is just in there and someone forgot to edit it out? I'd like a legal answer to that. We've expressed different opinions, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Ragman, and I, but no one has actually gone in the code and answered this. And I of course think that the code is like the checks and balances of the United States, that the planning board sets up their square footage, just like Congress votes on something, and then the Supreme Court or you all make it's a second stage. You are to judge compatibility. It's another refinement. This is how I see it, and I do not think you can close on this until you have explained to all of us the legal, come to some legal understanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ann.
Any more comments?
People always get upset at a public hearing when I ask where they live. And I just want to make this very clear, because there are clients and the people in the room that I've represented, and there are people that I have socialized with. I don't say these things just to upset people. I want to make this crystal clear. I raise the location of the letter writer's addresses because it has to do with administrative standing and it has to do with legal standing, and if I didn't raise it, I would be malpracticing. One of the authorities that I gave Bo at the last meeting was a case in which an objection to one of my clients' houses was dismissed, thrown out of court, not only because they didn't have standing to raise the issue in the court, they had no standing to raise it administratively before the agency. So I wouldn't be doing my job. I'm sorry if it hurts people's feelings, but that's really too bad. It's my job to do that. Let me point some other things out. I sort of feel like no good deed has gone unpunished here. This house is 2,079 square feet less than the allowed gross floor area. That's the square footage of a large ranch house, so it's not a piggish house. It's also 8 feet and 7 feet lower than the allowed height. The basement is irrelevant. That's 116-17.1A1. The floor area of the garage is irrelevant. That's 116-17.4B. The size of the house we've talked about. You can't make some legal principle become true because you want it really strongly to become true, or you want to wish it to become true. The case law involving this board said you have no site plan authority. And actually, that wasn't even a litigated issue because the board itself had admitted that they had no site plan authority, and you don't have the right to downsize a house. This village went through a very bloody political battle for about 3 or 4 years over the size of houses. It went back and forth, and it was settled what the size of a house could be. We're 2,000 square feet under that. So this is horrible. To characterize this house as massive and to say that you clearly have the right to downsize it. I know when my adversary has nothing in his quiver, when he keeps on saying clearly, you don't have the right to downsize. I've given you this authority. But again, we're not even stretching the envelope. We're not even coming close to it. It's 2,000 square feet under the allowed square footage. You have quite clearly fulfilled your mandate. It's been trying to be cast as people who haven't fulfilled your mandate. Everything that you've requested, we've given to you. We've given you the perspectives. We've given you the proportion. They just don't like the way we've given it to you. They don't like that you don't keep asking us for information because obviously you're satisfied. And I would ask after this 5th hearing, there's nothing more that you can gain from another hearing. There's nothing that is going to shed any further light on this. I understand that people don't like change, but we're within our rights under the law, and this is hardly an aggressive application. So I'd ask you to close the hearing and make a decision. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Jeff Bragman for Ann Pine. I have to reiterate that the Ferrara case that counsel is referring to was not a house in the historic district. It is not a precedent for you. And I won't use the word clearly. I'm just going to reiterate that what I said to you tonight about your authority and your obligation to examine the comparative scale of the proposed Farrell House to the existing houses was a quote from the historic district chapter regulations, which also state quite clearly that you're entitled to require an applicant to give you any information necessary. And that means that when an applicant tells you there is no need to proceed with any testing because the project's visual compatibility with surrounding properties is beyond dispute, that you have the right to look at that applicant and say, we want you to produce the documents that our code requires in every ARB application that occurs within a historic district. That is what you should do before you take action on this case. You should do it because in obtaining that evidence, you assure yourself that you are making a rational decision. And in the absence of comparative evidence that is required by statute, that is wandering into the territory of making a decision that is challengeable. The FAR, the floor area ratio law, does not override architectural review. In fact, if you read the FAR law in one of the paragraphs, it even acknowledges the existence of architectural review in an instance when it could affect the floor area ratio. The two statutes are not inconsistent. Using your common sense, you can easily reconcile them and harmonize them. The FAR simply means that in the absence of any other restriction, you can build up to the FAR. But when you are in a historic district, there is a more refined obligation that is, and a responsibility to examine the comparative scale of the new to the old, unquestionably. So you may, absent any further regulation, this builder, this developer, might be able to build a 7,500 square foot house. But he's in the historic district. Your board has been given the authority and the mandate to examine the comparative scale of that building. And so the answer to the question is he can build up to the FAR provided that he produces a record that demonstrates that the scale is compatible with the other houses in that district. And if you take the road offered by counsel for this applicant, you are negating the authority of your board. You are eviscerating architectural control in your historic district. It's not the intention of the statute. It doesn't say it in the statute. That's not the way zoning codes operate. There are often these contradictory sections in codes where you're given a setback or a floor area that you can do absent other considerations. This applicant is asking you to put blinders on and make a decision without knowing and seeing what's involved here, and that is a mistake, and ultimately an unsupportable mistake in law. And we ask you not to accept that invitation, to exercise the control that you've been given, and to turn to this applicant and say, you are a large, active builder. You're capable of giving us elevations and perspective drawings that incorporate the surrounding buildings. We want to see it before we approve it. And that is what we think you have to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
No other public comment? Ham, questions, comments?
I'll let you guys go first.
Ryan?
First of all, I want to thank all the people that have been presenting. You've done so much work on this, and it's really heartfelt to see the passion that you have for this. All along, I was listening to what we were trying to do from the initial design to break down the scale of it, and we asked the architects to come back and things like that, and I think they've done a good job at breaking down the scale of this house. And the plans that we have every dimension on them that you could ask for.
Could I see the scale?
Yeah, well, these are reduced copies, but it's
I can't record that.
1/4 inch is equal to a foot.
Is that on there?
Yes.
Please, can you go up to the microphone? I can't record those comments.
And so what this is showing is that the front of the house before the setback is only 59 feet.
May I see the document, please?
Sure.
And when was that submitted? Because it wasn't there last week.
On the bottom.
Go on talking.
And there's no scale on this, why don't you, since you're up there, show that.
No, I'm an architect. I deal with buildings and plans every single day. So I understand dimensions and scale and things like that, probably more than anybody else on the board. And I'm struggling right now with the fact that this is in an historic district, and it doesn't look historic. And that light bulb just went off tonight. So I'm struggling, and I'd like the help of the board to help me with that.
I'm corrected. I see it. I did not see it.
Maybe they were just submitted, after the last meeting because you had asked for them.
I did bring that up.
These plans were in the file. This is a reduced copy of these plans. This is the full-size copy. It was in March 7th.
March 7th was the date, for the record.
After the last
Fine.
meeting. That's the point exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
But that's not what we're talking about right now.
It's a vacant parcel.
I think this is a bigger issue than just what we're looking at, and I'd like, if we could, the entire board to go visit this site and walk the neighborhood and really make an informed decision. I don't need any more perspectives or drawings or elevations. I sort of understand what's happening. Maybe you guys do, but that's where I am.
Christine?
I agree with Brian. This is something that I've listened very carefully to everything that's been said, and I'm a reader, so I've read everything. I took it home, read everything. I visited the site, but hadn't been able to before because we do have sickness in our family. And I think what happens is you hear all this, light bulbs do go on. I think when I'm struggling with this because it's a flag lot, and when you took the model and put it behind the house in front, that made me think it is what Brian said. We need to think about,
And believe me, we wish
design
the
of the
zoning
house.
code was different. We wish it would help us, I mean, the fact that this is the largest lot in your little section there hurts us.
It was not the largest.
Well,
Junkies is the same size.
Okay, but still, the flag lots, it's twice the size of them.
And it's
So that
also-
hurts us,
Yeah. And it's also the fact that under our code, I mean, everybody who comes to us is already legal. They are within their rights. And our job is to look at our code and see how we can make it appropriate. But I think that the problem is that it's true. This house could have been much larger under our code. It could have been, I don't know if it could have been
2,000 square
Could have
feet,
been
yeah.
over 2,000 square feet more. So our code doesn't help us. We struggle with these things all the time and try and make the right decision for the village, for the homeowners, for the neighbors. We try to do our best, and we take it seriously. It's very time consuming. So that's my say.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is not far from my neighborhood. So Corrigan Street is something I travel every day. And driving down Corrigan Street every day, I have visualized what it would look like, what the impact would be from Corrigan, would it be from Hill Street for that matter. And as sympathetic as I am to the size and what kind of impact it would have, one thing I need to advocate to everyone is that they make ARB the last stand. When discussions about size should not start here, they should start with your board, your village board. Not here, but with your village board. If there's an issue with how the legislation is written for size, it shouldn't start here. And what happens is this very night where we have a bunch of people who are here who are very passionate about their community, very passionate about homes being built over size, and they're coming before us saying, you are the last stand. And that shouldn't be the case. That case should be brought before your village board, before your supervisor. So now we're here now trying to make a fair decision over this application and to your community. And it's tough. It is. It really is. Because and most of it is emotion, and then you have the right of the applicant to build what he or she wishes to do so. I don't agree with that every house in the historic district that will be built has to look historic. That's not a part of what we do. It's not a part of what we do. It's not. We have to leave license for the applicant to build what he or she wishes to, but be sensitive in terms of the design. So you won't see overly contemporary homes being built in the historic district of Southampton, but doesn't mean that everyone has to look like a cedar shingle, white trim, average and Queen Anne home. However, with that said, I don't think, and from a aesthetic standpoint, the house has an issue with this community. From an aesthetic standpoint, everyone's question has to do with size. It's one of the larger lots. It is tucked back further from the homes that were mentioned, and from my understanding, the impact would not be as grand. So that's my feel. Yeah.
I'd like to see a balloon test on this property. It's a no-brainer, always has been a no-brainer.
Like to see what?
We've done a balloon, a float test. We've done that on Meadow Lane. We've done it on a number of houses in the village. No matter how aware you are of this village, where you drive through, or when you're looking at plans and so forth, there's nothing like standing there and looking at it. There's too many people here. I think it's a no-brainer to do that. And I think it is a good idea to walk on site as a board. But I also think the fundamental balloon test, it's a float test, it works. And the results you can see up and down Meadow Lane. You can see it in other areas of the historic area of the village. And that's always what I've thought. And I also think for a project like this, it's in a sensitive area. The physical model is also a no-brainer. So I really don't have any more comment than I had on the first meeting, the second meeting, and the third meeting. I'm sorry I missed the last one, but that's where I stand.
Okay.
It's a tool.
I would like to go with you to the site. I don't think this is a complicated thing to do. I think we need someone like...
Christine, speak up, please,
Sorry.
for record.
No, I was just saying that I would like to visit the site with a couple of my board members and come up with a solution to this so that we can move forward.
Would you want a balloon floating on the site at the time?
A what?
A balloon, a physical balloon test. In other words, an angle of attack where we actually floated the balloon. We had them do a balloon test. There's two schools of thought. One is a mathematical angle of attack. The other is to actually copy the ridge, float a balloon at 32 feet at both ridge ends, or at the total ridge, so you get an idea of the scale of the house as it relates to the neighbors and as it relates to the landscape and so forth. It works.
Sure. With the balloon, are you speaking about all four corners so that you have...
Two ends, one in the center.
So you know,
one down at
you
the
see
low
the
end of
volume.
garage. Yeah, you have the volume of a linear look in the height.
Well, we have in past years had a site staked out where we stake
Precisely.
out the house. Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. A-frames, that's it. It's an old tool, it works.
So, board's in agreement to that?
But I don't need to hear anymore. I feel like I really am up to speed on the reading and the comments.
Okay. So, the applicants
You know what, for the applicant, it works too, John, sometimes. At Silverman, if you look,
Visit the site? Go ahead.
excuse me?
You can visit the site. That's always within
Talking
your
about the
power.
balloon float and
Do
so
whatever you
forth.
want at the site. I'm not offering any more. I think we've reduced the height of the house.
You have to step forward, because I think
we've
that...
reduced the height of the house by 7 feet.
Do you remember Silverman's application?
I sure do.
And that was approved. You know why it was approved?
It doesn't matter, Ham. You're on the fifth hearing. You're asking me for something.
We asked that on the third.
Yes, and then it was at the last hearing. I was told that with the exception of changing the deck, okay, in the back, that nothing else would be necessary. And this is a clear case, and I'm going to make my record, Ham. This is a clear case of counting numbers and caving to political pressure. You don't have to say yes or no. It's clear what's happening. The last meeting, Curtis, you said there was no problem with the application. You wanted to have the back deck removed. Brian, you said the same thing. You said everything that they've asked for, the applicant has asked for, they've given us. It's never going to be a historic house, Brian. It's a vacant parcel. Okay, so I mean, you're always very helpful with your comments and everything, but on this particular one, I really don't know what you mean. It's a vacant parcel. It's never going to be a historic house. Okay. So, and both of you gentlemen said, we can't move forward tonight. You have two of our votes, but Christina, understandably, was concerned about it for her own reasons.
You have the three
Excuse
votes.
me?
Doesn't sound like you have the 3 votes tonight.
No. Well, you know what? The problem is predictability, and the problem is consistency. And the problem is not bowing to...
John, I said I was okay.
John, what happens if you
Ham,
float
you've
the...
missed a
Let me
whole
finish.
host of meetings.
Let me finish.
Maybe if you had been at the meetings, we would have been able to
John, I've
hash
been
out
at
some of
meetings
this
for
stuff.
14
It's the
years.
fifth meeting.
Let me finish.
Fifth meeting, Ham.
If you float...
You can do it. You do it. If that's the information that you want,
Float a few balloons.
you can do it yourself.
be a
You can
great
go to the
service for your
property,
client.
Ham. You can. There's plenty of helium available at various stores. Okay. If you want to go to the site and mark a balloon at 32 feet on either end and walk off the width of this house, and see how high it is, and walk out to Hill Street, 270 feet away from the
Ironically,
building
when those
envelope.
float tests were done on Meadow Lane,
You can do it
John,
yourself,
the
Ham.
application was approved.
I'm giving you permission. You can do it yourself. Once I believe the law is once I make an application, I have to let you on the property. I believe that's the law. That's fine. Go.
But this board is not going to be implementing or be doing any balloon tests.
We're not
That's
into
something that
balloons, John.
something that the applicant is to do, but this
Yeah,
board is
well,
not.
I think you're beyond reasonableness in asking for that. This house is, the building envelope is 207. It's a football field away from Hill Street. A football field away from Hill Street. It's of a conforming size. It's 8 feet less than the maximum height. You know what the ridge line is. Take 2 sticks of 27 feet. Hold them out. Have one of your board members go
What
out
is
to
it
Hill
that you wish
Street.
this board to do? Because it doesn't sound like the board can go further right now. A board does not wish. Let's pull the board. Ham.
No, I want you to close the decision. Close it and make a decision.
Are you prepared at this time to close the application?
No.
Christine?
Well,
So what is it that you wish?
You're not getting anything else from me. I'm done. Vote it up or down. You're not getting anything else from me. Vote it up or down. What you're doing, you do not have the authority to do. You do not have the authority to alter this house in terms of height or gross floor area. You have made absolutely no comments about the architecture of the house, none other than the rear decks and the fact that you wanted
Are you
some
asking this board to
variation.
vote?
Are you asking for a vote, John?
No, I'm asking you to do your duty. Well, first of all, I don't think you can. It's in the historic district. You need a written decision.
Got to be a
don't you?
written
Yeah.
decision. That's why I'm asking if you're closing for written decision. Are you asking for a vote?
Yes, I want to close for written decision, and I want you to vote on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Fine.
No further comments from anyone?
Just for the record, though, we are requesting, in this case, I'm requesting a float test and an angle of attack view of the property from the public right away, both Corrigan and Hill Street.
And I've told you, you have full access to the property. Any sort of
Requesting that
testing you want to do.
The applicant make that.
We've given you all that we've given you all that
You're
you.
saying no, clear?
No, I'm telling you. I'm saying that we have provided you all that is you can reasonably require from us.
Okay, thanks, John.
Nothing further for the board? Yes.
If you're going to close the record tonight, I want to hand in a letter. I had requested at the beginning some time to give you written comment, but if you're going to close the record, I'm going to hand in.
Okay.
So you are or you're not going to the site? You can go to the site after you close.
You're
the
asking
record.
this board to close for a written decision.
No, you can go to the site after you can go to the site after the hearing.
Okay, okay, now I'm confused. You've asked this board for a written decision by...
Tell me to sit
Come
down.
on, guys,
Okay,
please.
Gentlemen, people.
Guys.
No, go ahead.
It's not okay. And you know better, and you're much
Mark,
more educated.
hey,
Always going for it.
Not with this guy.
seriously, please. I just have a question. Are you asking this board
Yes, I'm
to
asking you to
close for
close
written
the
decision?
record. Yes, and give me
For
a
written
decision.
decision?
It's in the historic district. You have to give me a written decision.
Okay. Motion to approve applicant's request. You're
wait,
saying no.
hold
Now,
on.
what?
No.
He's asking for a written decision.
Well, he's asking. That doesn't mean you have to grant it.
Right?
John's the first one to tell you that, and I'd be the second. And I'm saying that.
John, stop messing around.
Okay.
Jeff, did you have something you
wait
want
for
to
counsel.
add?
Down, Jeff, could you sit down?
Yeah,
please?
guys, sit down for a minute, please. Thank you.
If the board still first of all, even if the matter were more in a consensus to close tonight, I would have requested a 2-week period for submissions in terms of memorandum of law to address the issue about the legal power of this board to basically supersede the zoning law in terms of the floor area ratios. But that doesn't look like where things are at the moment. If the board, as it has just said, would like to go out and visit the site en masse, look at these other, the neighborhood, That's perfectly acceptable and reasonable in my opinion. But if that's the case, the board is basically gathering further information. And I would suggest in a matter of discretion that the meeting not be closed because you're getting further information. I would still like to have memorandum of law on the issue of the floor area ratios. So notwithstanding the applicant's request to close the meeting and have a decision, if you're so inclined to deliberate on this further individually and view the property and perhaps take Mr. Studenroth with you and review this, I would say that you need not close it tonight. The better part of discretion would be to keep it open for all purposes and come back at the next meeting and then determine where you are preparatory to closing the meeting at that time for a decision. So I'm just saying there's no particular need, as this has gone on this long, in my opinion, to close it tonight. If you're still seeking further information, then the better part of that decision is to keep it open for all purposes.
And Jeff, you had something that you wanted to add into the record?
If it's going to be continued for all purposes, I'll wait.
I think we should follow Bo's advice.
I agree.
But if your information that you're proposing could possibly help or assist us as we go and look at the site with our historic consultant and further deliberate over this, maybe you want to enter it into evidence now, into the record now.
I can.
I feel like I'm in a
I can
court of
give
law.
you a letter. I was worried about whether I'd be able to have more time. I have a letter I can give you tonight. I'm perfectly happy to try to give Bo some law on the relationship between FAR and the ARB. I've alluded to that in this letter, but it's not. It's a short paragraph. So I could give you a letter tonight.
You want
and
to
then
conclude that first and enter it at another time then?
It's up to you. I could.
No, it's not up to them. It's up to you, Jeff. And
You know what? If you're going to keep the record open,
ready tonight, don't submit it.
let me take a little more time on it.
But
Okay,
I'm suggesting
it was kind of an
right now
emergency
that
letter.
If you're going to adjourn it for all purposes, then to include in that a 2-week submission that by the beginning of the next meeting, that anybody wishing to address the issue that I've said with regard to the precedent of the zoning law or not over the ARB law, have those memorandums submitted by the beginning of the next meeting.
Well, I'm not making that motion because I don't understand. Somebody else has to make that motion.
Want me to rephrase it?
Yes, please.
The meeting, this application will be adjourned for all purposes to the next regular meeting. Anyone wishing to submit memorandum of law with regard to the issue of the precedent of the zoning law, Chapter 116, over the historic code with regard to the size of the house, have the submission for presentation to the board no later than the commencement of the next regular meeting.
So motion. Is there a second?
I have one
Second.
question. Excuse me, Barbara, miss it again.
you
Are you going to do
Call
the
your vote.
balloon
Call
test
your-
or not?
We are not doing a balloon test.
I don't mean you. Are you going to ask for a balloon test?
We did.
It was requested. It
It
was
was
We
asked.
had a
requested.
motion and we seconded it, so. Okay.
Yes, you will. I'm
Robert's
still-
rules, vote on your motion.
All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
So you were asking for a balloon test, correct?
You're asking for what?
The
We
balloon
did,
test.
we asked for one, I asked for one individually from the applicant. The applicant at this point has said no.
So you're not going to require it. Is that correct?
It's not a question.
The only thing we can do is ask.
They've asked for it and it's been declined.
Okay. Next application, please.
Next application is 436 Gin Lane. There's a letter in the file. The applicant is asking for an adjournment.
It was requested to be adjourned until the 26th, so motion to...
John, you're the attorney on that matter, right? Yeah.
I'm asking,
Excuse me. We can't hear the applicant?
I'm asking for the adjournment. The board wanted economic evidence of a different form. I'm in the process of providing it. Mr. Kropinski's firm is providing me detailed analysis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Motion to approve applicant's request to adjourn until the 26th of March.
I make a motion, we approve the applicant at 436 Gin Lane's request to adjourn to the 26th of March.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next application, please.
Aquavella, 195 Oxfest Road, there's a written decision.
Decision is in the file approving the application as submitted, and affirmative vote on the motion will be to approve the application plan.
Motion to approve council's request to, I'm sorry, council's written decision to approve.
Which one are we doing?
Aquavella.
I make a motion that we approve the written decision by our counsel for William Aquavella.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chris and Renee Lindell, 259 South Main Street, written decision.
Decision is in the file, and an affirmative vote on the motion will be to grant the certificate of appropriateness as submitted.
Motion to approve written decision by council.
I make a motion that we approve the written decision by our counsel for Chris and Renee Liddell on South Main Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Concludes our,
No, but hand up.
this concludes our historic applications for this evening. First application, non-historic.
Chairman, could I ask a favor?
Sure.
I have to leave.
I'm
as
going
soon
to
as
have to
I can because of
recuse
my
on
husband. Could we
101.
bring-
There's two that's has to be recused.
Oh, you're recusing on two?
No, just one.
On which one?
101 Hunting, number 4.
Number 4.
Right.
And Braden, which one?
I'm not.
Doesn't have
You're not
any.
recused?
So
All right.
could we hear 101?
Okay, there's going to be a change in the
Order?
order right now. We're going to call number 4 first, 101 Hunting LLC. Unfortunately, one of our board members has to leave early, and so that we have a quorum, we're going to ask for that applicant to appear now.
And for the record, I'm going to recuse on 101 Hunting.
I'm Jim McMullen from Fleetwood and McMullen. We were here last meeting, and the board had a couple of questions or requests for more information. One being regarding the
I
second.
can't hear the applicant. If we can take all discussions out in the hallway, please.
Regarding the second floor decks and what impact it would have on the neighbors. What we have done is we've sent you some drawings, actually some photos.
What are the dates of submission?
The dates of submission was probably a week ago.
The 28th February?
It'd be the Friday, whatever Friday was.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the.
Do you know the
Friday
date of the plans?
was. Do they have it on that one there?
It would be color renderings. This
Color
this
Yeah,
exact
photos and
large.
there were two
They-
sets.
they do
Yes.
have-
So, dated March 7th.
Okay.
Proceed.
What we were requested to do was give you some images looking from the house towards the neighbors' properties. Out of the 5 neighbors, one to the east, west, north, south, and kind of southwest. 4 of them all have roof decks. This one to the east, this one to the north, this one to the west, and this one to the southwest, all facing this property. We showed you views from the backyards, so you cannot see, even though it's winter foliage, you cannot see the other houses or their decks. And we even have some photos where we kind of stuck our arms through the hedges and plant material to show the decks that are on the neighbors' properties. The second piece of information you requested was regarding the stone chimneys. We did some research. I have this is for the board. In the general vicinity, within a block or block and a half, there are 6 houses with stone chimneys, ranging from around 2,000 to up until I think the most recent is 2011 that were erected. One of them is a house that our firm did on Wyandanch, which is a good example of the Connecticut fieldstone that we want to use. I believe that one is the second page of your packet. Which is this one. In talking with one of the landscapers that we use, I asked him about the Connecticut fieldstone and how indigenous or natural is it to the area. Connecticut fieldstone is found in New England, as well as Long Island and parts of New York. Once you get further north into New York, you get into the bluestones and stuff like that. So this type of stone that we're proposing to use is actually a natural stone to the area.
Do you have an example of it?
We actually have.
We all know that the glaciers deposited these stones across the Ohio.
Right. So
That's why
these.
They were sort of rounded. These are glacial errata deposited.
Right.
But they're not all carved. They're kind of rounded because that's what happened. Is the glacier. We don't have any native rock. We live on a sandbar. But the rock that got here was pushed here. And so it's New England stone. It's
Yes.
just rounded. It's not.
Right. Either quarried
Just
or.
a little geology there.
Thanks, Zach.
It's exactly what we needed now.
You don't want to hear about
a
the
geology
moraine,
lesson.
you know.
It's exactly what we need.
Tangent. I'm just saying,
They're
it's
all
not
that.
exactly indigenous, but it's sort of it's a god.
Yeah. Right. So, you did ask for a sample. Obviously, I can't. These samples are 4 feet by 4 feet and weigh about 2,500 to 3,000 pounds. So.
Could muscle it in here.
Not anymore. So it is kind of a very natural, light color, and in keeping with the area.
Well, that's definitely better than that.
Brian, comments?
Which house did you say indicated?
The second one.
Second one.
Yeah.
So you're not saying the first one? It looks.
Because the first one is.
That one's actually on Wyandanch, also
I know.
on the opposite side of the street and down a little bit.
And now I see it. And
yeah.
Yeah. Did you see?
Is it this one?
I didn't say it was. I didn't say it was a good example
Yes.
of it, but
Like a Flintstone house.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the chimneys.
Anything further, Brian?
No, I don't have any issues.
Christine?
I think it was Ham that had the issues, actually.
Oh, okay.
I don't think he has issues anymore.
Yeah.
Christine, any comments?
No, I'm fine.
Second story deck?
Is that?
Yeah, that's what they're proposing.
they're
To
proposing.
keep the second story deck.
Oh, can keep it.
as I said, from those photos, you can see the neighbors all have second-story decks, which you can't see from my client's property, which in turn, they're not going to be able to see our decks either.
Really?
Brian? How are you with it?
Yeah, I'm not as adverse to decks as some of the other board members.
Any public comment on the application? Motion to approve.
I make a motion that we approve 101 Hunting LLC.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
I will go to the site anytime you want to call.
Okay. I'm away next week, so it will be the following.
And Esther will be
She
the
will?
next meeting. Esther will be back at the next meeting.
It was really nice to be nice.
Yeah, really.
Understood. Have a good night.
Back on the regular schedule? We're calling 153 Bishops?
Yes.
Thank you, Christina. 153 Bishops Lane.
Anthony Vermandois, 68 Union Street, Sag Harbor. I'm the architect for the project. We were initially presented this project 2 sessions ago in February, and we wanted to respond to some comments that the board members made and also that the neighbor to the south had made. I think one of the concerns was that the house immediately to the south is very close to the property line. I believe it's about 5 feet or so away from the property line, and the impact of the house, our proposed house, on the neighboring house. And one thing that you will recall in the previous in our initial application, we had all of our utility program stacked on the south side of the property, so the driveway running up the south side of the property, the garage on the south side of the property, and the mudroom and basement entrances all on the south side of the property. What we thought we would do, in deference to the neighbor to the south, and since the neighbor to the north is more or less centered on their property, and also since their garage and I believe their utility area is towards the south side of their property, we would just simply mirror the house. So basically, what had been all of our utility entrance, instead of being on the south side of the property, is now on the north side of the property. It actually works to our advantage as well because it gives some of the public rooms in the house better exposure.
You just went.
We have drawings.
Restart.
Yeah. All right.
It's okay.
Slow down a little bit.
I kind of wanted to give you the history, but
It's okay.
to maybe just sum it up in 3 words, we mirrored the house relative to its property. And if you look, I provided the new site plan S1. It's actually the small version because one of the things you requested last time was the plans at a smaller scale. So I believe Brian is actually holding the new plans, and Ham, you have the original plans.
All right. I'll share one mini set with you. That's okay.
So, you got me right.
I'm on A5.
Okay, I think you want to be on S1.
S1.
S1?
Yeah. The driveway's flipped to the other side.
Right.
And the house is
You flip-flopped.
Yeah, basically flip-flop the house. So the driveway's on the north side. This was in deference to the property to the south, which is much closer to its
Because of
property line than
equipment?
the one on the north. I'm sorry?
Because of equipment?
Well, just having...
the layout. Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Driveway, utility entrance, garage.
Yeah, I think it's nice.
It's
very familiar.
That wasn't intentional.
No.
And then a couple of other things that we did just to sum up. We was also concerned about the ridge height and the size of the gables.
I was referring to the site plan, not the house yet. Right.
Oh. Use your glasses too. Pen.
Shoes.
Got your shoes.
Your shoes too?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to flip-flopping the house is probably the most radical thing we did, but there was also some other concerns we wanted to address. I think there was a discussion about the ridge height, the height of the gable ends, and also in the original plans, the original elevation plans, there were windows on the attic level, and there's a question of whether or not the attic would be usable. So basically, what we did was we lowered the main ridge. We lowered by 2 feet from 32 feet 10 inches to 30 feet 10 inches. But what we did moreover, what we also did was we lowered the hips of the gables. So in the previous plan, they were 27 foot 8 inches from the from grade to the point where the hips of the gables began. Now we lowered those by 5 feet, so that comes down to 22 foot 8 inches. What that did also was it eliminated those windows at the attic level that everybody seemed to be concerned about. So that renders that attic basically very much less headroom up there. The other thing is that in lowering, even though we only lowered the main ridge by 2 feet, by lowering the gable ends, that actually reduced the length of the main ridge from 47 feet to 40 feet.
You're talking about your Dutch gables there?
Yes. So in other words, in the original plan which we presented, the Dutch hips were starting at a much higher, 5 feet higher than they are in the current proposed plan.
Brian, you have any comments?
No, I think what you did was appropriate.
Pam?
Just a couple of things on materials, please. Just to double check.
It's the same size as the Theranos.
Yeah, it really is.
That's why he said it looks familiar.
What's your brick material? Just out of curiosity. Brick or stone?
Danish blend.
Danish blend, okay.
The one thing that just in the original set of plan.
Any public comment on the application?
You want that set?
Public comments?
Yes.
Yes, please step forward.
Heide Löfgen, 149 Bishop Lane. I'm the one to the south.
Guten Abend, wie geht's?
God, I've worked so hard to lose that accent. It's so depressing after 40 years on Bishop Lane. Still have that accent.
Yes, it's okay.
That is
it feels
terrible.
home.
I'm
It feels home. It feels
totally
home for me.
deflated now. Yes, so I have some visuals here. Oh, and my most important piece. This is all very amateurish, but I tried my best. It's an old chocolate box. There we go.
That's cool.
Chocolates are not in anymore.
Sure.
But this is the proportion. So, off the microphone here. And these are sets.
This one's done. And then there's this guy.
This wasn't approved. This wasn't approved. No.
Yeah.
Here's one more packet.
Thank you.
Visuals, which I took all by standing in front of the applicant's house. That's me. I mean, that's 149 Bishop Lane. I'm the one to the south. And anyway, I appreciate being here, and I also appreciate the changes that you have made. So I live immediately to the south, and all these houses are visible when you stand in front of the applicant's house. They are ranches or 1.5 story high, between 15 and 20 feet to ridge, and on half-acre lots, which is typical on Bishop Lane, which is a kind of narrow lane to begin with. They're all hidden behind hedges, as Mr. Fermandois last time said, which is due to the fact that they are very low, which will not be the case for this new project. It will loom way over the hedge. And it is about 100% taller than the house to the south. But I'm not only motivated by narrow self-interest. I also really worry about what happens to the at the western edge of the village, because it has become very popular now, because there's this wonderful development that Mr. Benedict put in there, Bishop's Pond. So it has suddenly become very attractive, and as I'm standing here, there are four building sites going on, right now, simultaneously. So it is really attractive, and it is something that I think the board might to pay really attention to, because they are all small. And I've lived in my house for 40 years, as I just pointed out. And its main part is 90 years old. And it's also on half an acre. And as Mr. Fermandas pointed out, I'm only 5 foot away from the hedge on the other side. So whatever goes up legally on the other side is really, really looming close to me. But then I know you have no really individuals do not sway your opinion, but it's the larger view, and this will stick out, this house, definitely. So, and you know, there's a house 2 down. It's, I think, I can't remember which picture it is.
It's the last one.
Yeah, which looks beautiful, which looks gorgeous, I think. And it has, you know, a lot more frontage to Bishop Lane than the applicant's house. But the way it's laid out, it's fine. So.
You're referring to this?
Yes. Yes. You know, I really don't want to take much up of your time, and I don't have to tell you, you know, what your role is. You have been told enough what your role is.
We get told weekly.
But I think the one big thing that really would make a difference is a staggered roof line. Pretty much what I point out there on the second to last picture, or the last picture. Yeah, everything pretty much has been said in my accent.
So good.
And you know, the Bishop Pond development, I mean, sometimes something new really does replace something ugly. It was a sand pit, so you can only improve on that.
That's correct.
But even if it hadn't been a sand pit, it's a great thing. And the reason why there's sort of not much opposition is across the street the neighbor is suffering from Parkinson. And the neighbor to the north has rented out his house for years, year-round. So, and then Mr. Bennett is in Florida.
Yes.
I hope I've covered everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you talking about the size of the house as being an issue? Or?
I do. But I do appreciate, you know, that Mr. Fernandez brought it down 2 feet, but that isn't that much.
Have you noticed that he's changed the gables and the presentation?
I have noticed. Yeah, I have noticed.
Do you think that do you find those to be attractive improvements, or?
Definitely, they are on the right trend. The trend is there.
You're
I would like it to continue.
They haven't quite.
Not quite. It's still
achieved
massive.
What you were looking for.
It's but you know, for the street, it's still massive by comparison. I mean, my house is really low, but I don't know. There is a drawing in there that I don't quite understand. This looks as if there's something larger behind it, but there is actually it's lower. What's behind? This is, you know, Bishop Lane, and what's behind my house is actually lower. So it looks on one of the drawings as if it's rising. And the same thing with the house to the north. It looks as if the straight addition that is north to the entrance to that house, it looks as if that is taller than the original part, but it isn't. It's the same height. It just, you know, on the drawing it looks as if it's larger, but it isn't. And so my ridge height is 15 feet, and the planned one is now 30 and 10 inches, I think. Right, so it's still double. But I'm not motivated by self-interest.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You're in a one-story house, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, but yet the two-story house that's further down the street, which you show on the photographs, you're okay with that?
She's saying because of
the way it's broken up,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And scattered.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the mass of this house, you know,
I
that it
understand.
rises.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any more public comments? Did you see your house?
I think I heard it. My name is James Whitehall, and I live at 139 Bishop's Lane, one house to the south of Heidi. And my Heidi alerted me to what was the plans, et cetera, and I saw those, and I was pleased to hear the accommodation made on the roof line, because frankly, it's just really an aesthetic and common sense point of it's a large and it's a somewhat bulk that is is not common to the street itself. And when I heard the roof was coming down and I saw the drawings that had been marked up, I thought, well, that's good measure. I'm just a little, since basically what I'm thinking is that the roof line that's there, if it were to be lowered down to a lower level, not just an accommodation, but to a lower level, that if it doesn't affect any of the internal workings of the house, what is I think a reasonable objection to the aesthetic of that in the context of Bishop's Lane, that accommodation that was made, I don't see why it couldn't be made to a lower degree and diminish some of that bulk that I think makes it striking to the street view. And that's my primary contribution to this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any more public comments? Brian, comments?
Is there a way to lower that ridgeline without affecting your interior?
The answer, it's a slightly complicated answer because we did actually investigate lowering the ridge even more than we did, and the short answer is yes, it could be lowered without if further than what we did lower it without affecting the internal workings of the house. What I found was I felt changing the roof pitch started just to make the whole house look actually more squatty than it than it does now. It almost seemed like the pitch wants to be kind of steep. I think we could revisit revisit this to a certain extent. I'm not sure that we can get that much more lower than it is now. I mean, I think that one possibility is to break the ridge height up a little bit if some parts of it can still be up at that 31 feet.
Less like a Dutch dormer and more like a hip roof across. Right. Is that what you're?
No, I think if
bringing it down,
simplifying it, right?
I think if people understood the perspective of this, it wouldn't be as objectionable. I mean, it's really that's the sides, and he did bring this down, so it's really that's the mass that's impinging on the neighbors, and these are really just big dormers, So I don't think it's as bad as the neighbor thinks it is, or the neighbors think it is.
No, the dormers are still there, though.
Yeah, but I'm saying they don't impact on the neighbors as much as
if they're stepped back.
They're stepped back, so it's not as much of a mass.
Yeah. Interesting perspective.
If we had a perspective drawing, you'd see that.
Do you want to get one?
I don't need one, but
yeah. Right. So talk to me about what would happen if you brought this ridge height a little bit lower. You said you looked at it and your pitch got too shallow?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it started to, just looking at the side elevation, it started to look very, very squatty. And I don't really have anything visuals to really show you, but if you can just kind of imagine this kind of going like this, I think it starts to look kind of suburban.
Yeah.
What we could do very easily, won't affect anything at all, is to take these hips in even a little bit further here. Bring it down so that the gable ends are, basically just riding right above the window level. Yeah.
I think that would be weird.
I
don't think.
I mean, do you have any opposition?
No,
I'm okay with this. I think you've done a good job.
We feel it's not going to be as bad as she thinks it is.
I think if you bring that any lower, it's going to look very discombobulated and out of balance and so forth. I think it looks good, personally.
Okay, so
Maybe you
there's-
should show her what the view would be from her perspective, because that, crossing that out like that looked very, very good. I'm not sure if she's actually seen it from that perspective.
Well, we can certainly.
Take a poke at it.
Take
Might
a look.
make you feel a little bit
Yeah, no, I
this
do,
is,
I
yeah,
do,
this
I
is,
do, yeah.
this is the side here, and
Right.
from
Mhm.
your side, I mean,
Mhm.
really, this
Right.
is basically what's
It
facing
makes
you.
a big
This
difference.
is
Yeah.
much further
Now,
back.
what I'm confused by, is this going higher than the actual main roof?
No,
Or you'll bring it down now?
Yeah,
Alright.
I was just sketching that for
Yeah,
Ham's
right,
purposes.
right.
This is the main ridge, so this is what you're saying here.
Okay, and that is
Yeah.
30
That's
plus 10
that's a
inches.
30, 10 inches.
31 inches.
These
Quite a ways
little
back.
gables here are set down. I don't have an exact height
Yeah.
for you, but they're about
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
2 foot
Right.
down from that. So this is actually well proud of this.
So, oh, this is just from the veranda.
Did you
to
understand, or-
facing
Do
the
you want
west,
to come forward?
Right?
I was, I'm
Facing
fine.
west.
No, come on, come on. I said it's set back, not go back.
You know, so this,
And you're probably the first person who's ever followed his lead.
You're the only one ever listened to me. It's great.
so in other words, the so-called mudroom, this is not the mudroom. This
No.
is all over on the other side
Yeah,
now.
this is
Yeah,
all. This is
got
on
you.
the north here. This is what got
Okay.
me flipped. This is
Okay.
actually the front porch here. That you're seeing the side of the
Okay.
front porch, and
So,
in
but
fact,
this is the south elevation, so this mudroom thing is still there.
you know what? I'm sorry. This is my mistake. Because I mirrored
Oh,
this.
stop.
This should be the north elevation, right? This should be the south elevation.
Ah.
Yeah, that's.
I was confused about that, but I'm to begin
Well,
with confused. So.
Yeah, I mean that was. That wasn't. I wasn't trying to pull one over you. I
No,
just
no, no,
forgot
I
to change.
understand,
I
I
changed. I
understand.
mirrored everything, but I forgot to
understand.
change the
Yeah, yeah.
labels. So
I
this is the
understand.
south
Yeah.
elevation. So what you're seeing here is the front porch.
Got you.
You're seeing this back
Got
porch
you.
here. Yeah.
Got you. Got you.
Romo was mayor.
So this point is not higher than this?
It is higher. Yeah.
But in perspective, you're not going to read it that much.
In
Yeah.
other words, these gables, which correspond to what you're seeing in here in front, they're pulled in a little bit. So, and then they pitch in that direction.
I mean, the footprint of this house could easily be enlarged towards the west if the square footage, the interior square footage, is an issue. Because, it's there.
I mean, one thing that we did feel about the footprint of the house, which I did study when I looked at this, and I actually looked at the Google satellite view of this, and I attempted to print it out, but it wouldn't let me to print out the satellite view. It would only let me print out the street view. But that's another story. What I wanted to do is a good reference was actually the footprint of the existing house that's on the property, because it's roughly the same footprint
It
as
is,
this.
right.
It's
You
just taller.
square it up, with the deck,
and
et
comparing
cetera.
comparing the footprints, honestly, they're basically comparable. I mean, I would say even I agree, your house is a low house on the street, but it has a pretty
Being
deep
very, very,
footprint.
we're allowing this to go a little longer than it
Sorry.
should.
Because it's so amusing, maybe.
I'm just trying to keep everybody happy.
I don't want to confuse you. There wasn't. I
thought you said amuse.
Can't it be lowered a foot or so without it looking suburban? I mean, it makes a difference.
A foot in the scheme of.
Yeah, I mean, 2 feet in the scheme of 33 is not that much, which is all that it is lowered. It's 31 versus 33.
Okay.
So, I mean, any little bit really does help visual impact from Bishop Lane.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anything further? Anything further?
Nope.
Anything further from the public? Motion to approve?
You want me to go? I make a motion that we approve the application of 153 Bishop's Lane LLC.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next application is Jovan Todorovic. 24 Prospect Street.
this time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we were here at the last meeting, and this here is, just to start off from where we were last meeting, that you were concerned about the overall length of the house in relationship to Prospect Street. What I've done since then is study some aerial maps, and I have sort of noticed that the majority of the lots on Prospect Street are long and narrow. So by contrast, most of the houses were designed to be narrower looking, just to fit on the lots. But they also had ample side yards where they would have the driveway and other rooms to that. I have submitted to the town, the village, the revised drawing showing that the house, what we did was we took the garage, slid the garage further back, and then reduced the overall height of the garage before. The previous garage was up higher and a gable roof, and then to try and reduce the mass and the overall appearance of it, we sort of lowered the roof height and made a hip roof on top of that. Okay. One thing that we, noticing through also with the aerials, have some, I don't know if you would want some, or that the other thing too is that most of the properties on Prospect Street are very heavily planted. So it's very difficult to see the properties, the houses themselves as you drive down Prospect Street. The only ones that really do become visible are the ones that would be, as on here, the only house would be the two-story houses on the side where they really don't have any planting in front of it, and also across the street, the Dutch colonial houses also don't really have much planting in front of them as well. But every other house down the block is very heavily planted, and you really can't see it. We have, it was brought up a discussion about possibly detaching the garage. That was something that I looked at, but I felt that it just, one, it made the house look made the property look to be more overbuilt. And on the property, in the back of the property, there are some, well, you can see it on got some aerial views here. In the back corner of the property back here, there are a lot of mature trees that we're trying to preserve the mature landscape along that side.
Are tall trees. And they're 10 feet away from the property line, so we have to, in order to bring garage up, we have to cut those trees. And I'm trying to save the trees. I love the trees. They're 50 years old or older maybe, and they look beautiful, pine trees.
There's also on the property a very large and old English holly.
Yes, I would plant that tree in front of the garage. I would move it in front of the garage. Now it's on the side of the house, but I would replant that tree. So the garage would not be visible from the street at all.
We've
the
kept
attached garage.
A detached garage.
On the attached garage.
Attached garage.
Correct.
If we are trying to.
Yes, like it would be brought in front so that it would be, again, minimizing the impact of the attached garage.
And we also have two huge trees in the front. In summer, you don't see really the house almost from the trees. And I planted shrubs from the street, also 8 foot tall, on the side, 14 feet tall.
Yeah. The house really is not, even though it is a two-story house, we've kept the height down to only 27 feet to the ridge. So it isn't as if it is a big imposing structure, and it isn't that close to any real neighboring houses that it would be that imposing to the neighborhood.
Unlike other applications prior to this one's actually right on the street, so it has a
really is big.
major impact to the streetscape, like it's set back like other and previous applications. So therefore, any front facade is going to be more imposing than most applications.
I have to say,
That's the reason why I made the comment, and I still stand by it, that the breaking of the front facade would at least break that front linear look where it looks overpowering to the streetscape. I still feel that way.
Well, I was, when I looked at it with the garage shifted over, it still seemed to be more choppy, more, like in the neighborhood on the other houses where they seem to have like a large.
Pushed back.
Also, the house
Correct.
here, I have to, if I push the garage here, I'm gonna cut those trees. And this house is gonna open everything. The house is gonna look my garage here, now it doesn't see anything.
look, I know you're trying to make your property more livable in the rear than in the front because you want to stay away from the front, but what if you took the attached garage and shifted it back another 6 or 7 feet from where it presently is? And it would serve two purposes. It would make the garage
To
more
detach
submissive.
the garage?
No, to keep it attached, to slide it back on plane.
Oh,
Okay, well, currently, right now, the garage is set back approximately 50 feet from the front property line, where it is now, to the closest part. When we shifted it back to the closest section, it would be about 50 feet
Right.
to
What
the
I'm trying to say
property
is,
line.
how much further could you shift the garage because of massing purposes towards the rear yard? The attached garage, that cube,
The attached, yeah.
the attached garage.
You can
Put your
shift it
finger
to
right on
this
it.
Probably, this here right now is,
This
this
porch
back
line.
part here is an open porch.
Again,
In
know
the
what I'm
back.
saying. Put your finger on the porch, please, on the garage.
Right.
Sorry. Slide that back 5 more feet back.
Okay, that would line it up to the back of the open porch.
But it would take it off the street facade, the public right away, and it would make it more submissive as far as an elevation view by moving it further back,
Because currently,
or
right.
by making it
it's-
smaller.
Well, it's currently 50 feet already back. We moved it back
You're saying it's staggered back by what, 2 feet?
this year?
Yeah.
No, it's staggered back from the front of the house here by 10 feet.
By 10 feet. Okay.
Yeah,
we did all
so it isn't as if it's sitting right on top of the house. It's already set back 10 feet from the front of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And then the porch here is, set back in, so you do have
So other than
set
detaching,
planes.
detaching the garage, you can't push it back any further? Because I heard during the video, that's what you guys were pushing, is to get that as a detached garage, right?
That is correct.
There's more than that, though.
Yeah, and there's, the other thing is there's a tower, these 2 lobbing towers that you have.
That's the issue.
It's-
It's too
it's
much
just-
facade on the street.
Yeah, it's a real,
It should be
it's
a-
leaning forward.
A dormer and a roof or something.
Yeah.
Well, the house is not taller much than this house that we have now. Here, it's not much taller than this.
But that-
When you said towering, it's this is the house what is now. It's just that we are restructuring the roof because the roof has a little better lines than this one, and I don't see the higher. It's this is 2 stories now house. It's just in attic that the rooms are differently. The structure we are changing roof actually, but the height is same,
Yeah,
not
the-
much higher.
The height of the gables here
Yep.
are not any higher than the houses right next door. Than the
The house next
2-story.
door?
The house to the west.
It's higher. The house is next here to me. It's much higher than my house, and in back of the house
It's
much higher.
still the gable facade, so you're ending up having like the 2 gables facades and you
Can't
have the
you fold
roof.
the gables back into the
Yeah,
roof
there's too
line?
much
It's
front
too much going on.
facade on the second floor. I mean, if you took the original house and raised the roof up and put dormers back in that were tasteful, that worked within the roof line, I think that'd be much more successful.
This looks like it looks like 2 pillars. It's very commanding. The gable, if those gables can fold back and become
Hips.
or something along those lines. I'd like to see an alternate. It's just they're standing very tall, they're very proud right onto the street, you know, and I think the garage, moving it back, you see that you can't do that, it's not going to make much of a difference, and actually it exaggerates the problem, which is the front.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think moving the garage back would make that much of a difference. It's really those two particular items. They look like two stair towers that are, looks like a condominium, the way it's set up. I mean, not that that's a bad thing, it looks like a row house, rather. Turn around, look at it, show it to the camera. That way. There you go. So if you can fold one of those gables back, either the one on the right or the one on the left, so you soften that so it's not as oppressive on the street, that's the goal here, I believe. Is that correct, guys?
I still have a problem with the garage. I still have a problem with the whole entire linear.
So you have an issue with the garage as well as the issue of the two gables that are
I don't know what the
2 stories.
impact of changing the gable would have.
So I should not build the house, then I should not change the house, I should just keep that house. That's what you're trying to tell me?
That's not what this board told you.
Well, last time we said the garage, now it's all house, it's a problem.
I think I've been very adamant about the garage. I haven't said anything about pillars. The board members have their own point of view. So that's what we're here to look at your application.
We have an acre land there, and we cannot build a 4-bedroom house?
That's not what this board has said.
Let's back up a little bit.
I cannot build 2 stories house?
That's not what this board said.
Yeah, so your main objection really is to the sake of
impact.
So we have to hide
So
the
then
house.
if this.
No.
So-
Listen for a minute, please.
Yeah.
Let your representative
Let
speak.
your
He's-
architect speak
Yeah.
for a minute.
So what your main objection really is to having the 2 gables
forward
on the house.
Forward on the
They're
house.
not forward.
It's in the same plane as the house, so it really
Or the
fits.
same plane, or the same
Right.
plane, that's all. I think what's happening is it looks like 1, 2, 3 houses intermixed at the same time, to me. It's very, in other words, what is your purpose for the reverse gable there? 2 of them side by side with a split in the middle. It's a very busy forward,
It serves the purpose
Strong
that I
front.
believe you were looking for, that make the house look grand.
To give a little bit more
That's
of
what
a
you were looking for.
not impressive, but
No, that's
sort
what
of
you- yeah, grand.
more substantial appearance to the residents, as it's coming.
Well, you've succeeded in
house.
that, and that's what we're saying is
And-
the streetscape issue is that it's looking so prominent
Look,
now.
you
that
love
it's-
the neighborhood.
Hold on a second, Sally. It
Yeah.
really
Bought the
looks
house, right?
out of scale.
I bought
Okay,
the
now,
house because
even-
I like the neighbor, not particular neighborhood, I have a parking lot cross street. I am,
See,
like
in-
the village.
I
and
love
so
the
forth. That's
land.
what this board is about, is to try to maintain the vernacular, the styles and so forth. And I agree with the chair and I agree with Brian, that if in a perfect world we could move that garage as far back as possible, that's a priority for us. But the biggest issue that I'm seeing is that bam factor that you have on the street. And I think lessening the gables that are opposing almost, pushing themselves forward into the street is something that I'd like to see.
so, there would be then, I don't know what we can do. Just to put the gables, have a roof straight across and have 2,
I think you're better off with the dormers
Dormers?
that are breaking up a common roof line.
And see, I would think if you had a straight ridge coming across and gables at the end and just had the roof coming in front, that would be more of an imposing box than
Depends on the
something with
size of
a
the-
broken up elevation.
It depends on the size of the dormers and whether they're bell dormers or whether they're soft and so forth. I think you could rework that so it's a little less imposing. And you might even want to increase your mid-band detail there, which gets lost. Look at it. Right underneath that little shed bump out that you have, there's sort of the hint of a mid-band detail, which is where it looks like the roof wants to break on purpose.
You're talking about that part down there, or
There. That
this
one.
here, the freeze board?
Yeah.
See, like one issue that could come up is the sake that if we try and put just a straight gable, then just by the nature of the roof pitch, and the width of the house, we sort of had these gables here to sort of reduce the overall height. We were able to reduce the height of the house by having those gables running that way, and then the middle mast could then be set lower
Because of the pyramid
because
wall?
of the well, the pyramid wall, we have this here. We can go up higher, but I didn't want to go up higher because I felt that would have been too big.
Did that drive your two interlocking gables?
That was part of the
problem,
factor.
right?
Yeah, you know, because of the sake that, yes, you're allowed to go up to the 35 feet in the neighborhood. But none of the houses, except for the catering hall, which, if we're just talking scale, I know it's a catering hall, not a house, but
It was the house that
just
originally-
talking scale-wise, is much larger than other things on the house, just in pure scale, irregardless of what the structure is.
I don't want to drag you out. I was just saying, if you look at those gables again, lessen them, soften them a little bit so they're more detailed. I'm fine with the garage if you focus on that issue. I would love to see a
Oh, the-
detached garage, period, as well, but if you can't do that, at least I'd like to see a little bit of more of a pushback.
Ryan, anything else?
No, I think the problem is you have this double gable house on a street with all single gables, and across the street you have Dutch colonials, which had basically a first floor, then the roof sweeps back with some dormers in it. Did you ever think of making the center portion of this a Dutch colonial look with two additions onto the side?
It looked
You know,
very
and
graceful.
I think the center, you know, the entrance is off center, and so you have this very symmetrical second floor, and this, you know, it just looks like the entrance was just put there instead of, you know, I think that's what Ham's getting to. That's what makes it look like almost three separate buildings.
Right.
But I think, you know, if you could look at a different roof line that comes back from the street, I think that's what I'm having a problem with.
Try to take a look at Elm Street. There's 3 or 4 houses on Elm Street that have the same condition of the lot size and so forth, that have very elegant, but they're
I
still
look
the same
Elm
size.
Street.
Huh?
Elm Street?
And Elm Street in that
They're
area.
pretty much narrow. All the lots are narrow. This is that's the problem with this lot is wide and not deep enough. And I want to put a pool in the back. I cannot put pool. I have to be.
Just look at the Dutch colonial style, if you will. It might solve your problem, or solve one of the issues of the sizing.
Because you can get a good second floor in that roof.
You have
It's
actually
gambrel
more
roof.
space in that house.
What about that? We would go just put 2 gables here and just have regular roof here.
That could,
Yeah, well-
that could work too.
I mean, two dormers.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 dormers.
Soften it a bit.
Just have a regular roof here and 2 dormers. With that.
Why don't you look at both things and see what you come up with? Okay? You're not too far away. You understand the process.
I understand the process, but we are trying to work and it's getting the. It's time also. I'm.
Understood. Can we also talk about that second-story deck?
Second.
The second-story deck, I'm showing it.
Oh, the coming off of the master bedroom.
Yeah.
It's a balcony.
Understood what it is.
Yeah.
Board members, have you had the opportunity to see the balcony?
Inside of the house.
It's in the rear.
I'm okay with it.
It's a wide, shallow lot. Ryan, did you have the opportunity to do it?
Yeah.
What's the size of your balcony back there? About 5 feet?
4
depth?
4 feet.
4 feet?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a step out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a big porch. It's
It's inside.
Okay. But for the record, we just want to make sure we
It's
acknowledge it.
Yeah, it's about 4'7".
Okay.
4'7" and 5/8".
As you heard earlier,
Yes.
people have challenged our consistency with regards to second-story decks.
Oh,
I think
okay,
we've been
it's-
very consistent.
As long as you can't hit it from one deck to the other with a cannonball, we're okay.
I don't think it visually affects the neighbors.
I wouldn't use that analogy, but
We've used it before.
all right. So you have some homework to do.
Look at the roof lines, guys.
Okay.
Okay?
You asking this board to adjourn so you can do some modifications?
Yes, please.
Motion to, I'm sorry, any public comment on the application? Motion to approve applicant's request to adjourn until our next meeting.
I make a motion that we approve the applicant's request to adjourn to the next meeting for Jovan Todorovic on Prospect Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next application, please.
Wham, 76 Leo's Lane, LLC. This is your second house?
Leo's Lane, yes.
Right.
Jim Hoffman for 76 Leo's Lane.
Has this been submitted?
It's been submitted there, but maybe not in the same page order. I didn't give them every page. So this is an application for a two-story, one-family house with a detached garage.
Scared me for
I was here at the last meeting, and I think the only issue we came down to was the second-story porch, which came off of the master bedroom. So if you look on page A402 and what I passed out, you'll see that we've just removed it.
These plans are what you've submitted in, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And the A402 is the one that has the two chambers on the elevation.
Ham, you were not here at the last meeting. Any questions?
No, I don't have any questions on this house.
Ryan?
I think it looks good.
Thank you for your attentiveness to making the adjustments that were.
Can you just turn
requested.
that out to the camera? Sure. Thank you.
Any public comment on the application? Motion to approve?
I make a motion that we approve the application of WAM 76 Leo's Lane LLC.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next application, please.
We did 101 hunting, recused, and then we're a Meeting House Association LLC, 116 Meeting House Lane.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Jeffrey Butler, professional engineer, here on behalf of the applicant to present. The application involves the redevelopment of a lot that exists with a two-story residence on it now at 116 Meeting House Lane. The applicant is proposing to put a two-story house, a new two-story house on the site with a detached garage. I have with me a rendering with the sample board of the proposed front elevation. The existing property, as I said, is developed. Right now, the setback to the existing house is at 30 feet from the property line. This new house is proposed to be at 50 feet back. We're moving it 20 feet further back from the front property line. The surrounding houses in the neighborhood all are roughly in the neighborhood of the 30-foot setback, so we're pushing back a little further, and we're putting a detached garage and pool in the backyard. I'm here for any questions.
Ryan?
The house is up at 34 something?
34.7, I believe, yeah.
Let me just see. How does that relate to the neighbors? Do you know?
Yeah, the neighbor to the west is approximately that high, and that property is about 20-foot setback from the front property line. The neighbor to the west ridge line, I think, is about 24, 6 feet, somewhere in that range. So it's lower than this house, but again, that house is
up at the street.
Up at the street.
Nice presentation, by
Thank
the way. Very, very complete. Very compiled. Could you turn it to the camera so? Am, comments?
Just curious, on the gable, are you doing any kind of patterned shingle or anything, or is it just
It's just standard Maybach shingles.
Okay, so you're not bowing the top out or
No.
swaling it in any way? It's just
No.
flat?
Correct. It's in plane.
In plane?
Yep.
Okay.
Any public comments on the application?
Curtis, quick comment. I believe the property is currently improved with structure,
That's correct, yes, currently improved.
and I think that structure is believed to predate 1927.
I don't know that.
I was asked to go out and have a look, which I have not as yet had the opportunity, because there is a building on the property that predates 1927, and village code provides
Yeah.
for an inspection of that prior to the application. So I'm a little surprised that the actual application is here tonight.
I'm pretty sure that request had been made by my
But it
office.
hasn't been fulfilled.
Okay.
That sounds creepy, the way you said that. Hasn't been fulfilled. The house looks great, though.
Is this it's a two-family Dutch colonial? On
It's
the
a
street?
smallish house, it's on the property, and.
And there was a house in the back that had a fire?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
the
know the
rear
property.
structure
I have
burnt.
not as yet had the opportunity to go out and file that report, and so I think.
You think it's-
believe that precedes the actual application, that's why I wasn't expecting.
And we have verified the date of the structure. All right. Reasonable
So I'll
request.
do my diligence to go out there and do that.
Just for record, the board has no issue with the aesthetics. At this point, it's just formality with regards to making sure our historic consultant goes out and reviews the property based on the merits of it being predated our code's request. So when he comes back at our next meeting, he'll have a report. The report will give information as to the historical merit, and at that time, we'll take into consideration that report.
Okay.
But the aesthetics of your
You need nothing else from
is
us?
no issue.
That looks good.
Okay.
That's great.
Any public comment? So we're gonna adjourn. We can really.
For all purposes.
For all purposes, right? Okay. Motion to adjourn for all purposes.
I make a motion that we adjourn for all purposes the House at Meeting House Association LLC at 116 Meeting House Lane.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for your time.
1191, excuse me, 1191 Meadow Lane, the driveway gates.
Good evening. John Bennett, the applicant. Tim Rump, the landscape designer, or architect, excuse me. God, shoot me, Tim. Sorry. I just called you a designer. Uh-oh. Yeah, I know. I know. I'm going to pay for that one. I'm handing out copies of just a basic elevation of the house that's under construction. I just wanted to everyone to have that so they can see. I think it deals a lot with.
What's the spacing? Spacing of the.
Well, let me get to that. I wanted you to see the house because it drives what the application is being made. All right. And I wouldn't make this application on anywhere but Meadow Lane. This is a house that you approved. It was a tear down of a rather traditional house, and this is a Peter Marino house that's under construction right now, and it's from the street. It's on the, of course, the north side of Meadow Lane on the Bayfront side. And what we're proposing here.
This is a color rendition.
Oh, the color rendition. I was trying to. Okay. But what we're proposing here are some gates that are they're what are they to be painted aluminum.
It's stainless steel that is going to be painted to match the basalt that is on the plinth of the main house.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes. I wanted to give you an actual.
This is the basalt, which then we went to the site today and got a piece of it, which is this stone, which is the garage and the mechanical area that's been constructed.
So the whole idea is to match the color of this house, and of course to match the style of the house. It has openings that comply, but it's like a Venetian blind that's closed.
I don't have any issues with it.
Great.
Yeah, I'm like, that's why I was trying to expedite
does
the
great
file
work.
for you. If you want to keep going.
You had enough tonight? No.
That's what I was trying to
Really,
ask.
man?
Well, you know, it doesn't have some,
Tim, take him out of here.
Really? We gotta go have a, all right, slow.
Brian, do you have any issues with this? Okay.
I think it's a great house.
Great, it's a cool house. Nice.
You were in it for a battle, weren't you?
I make a motion to approve the application of 1191 Meadow Lane for the construction of driveway gates.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
We just proved the point. You came in there for
Go.
you just proved the point.
It's part of my work. It's the thing.
Mark and Ruth Wood, 51 North Captain's Lane for construction of garage addition. Dwelling.
You found something. I don't know who's this one.
No, that was.
No, that
Okay.
was, that was not this house.
Hey Sandy, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good to see you. Right.
Millard Peabody, Schultz and Peabody. Millard Peabody. And these, couple of these out.
Any sets?
Give you another one. Oh. Just to bring it up to date. Just a simple application for garage addition.
Okay.
On a flag lot.
Did I give you that flag? Sorry.
Well, these, they're not stapled together. I'm just worried.
Next
that it
time I'll
will-
staple.
That's okay. One more. Okay. Sorry, guys.
Like the
Different
DMV.
information.
Just 2 copies?
2 sets. I got another set here, but,
Yep.
is that right?
Okay.
The addition is on the west side of the house, a flag lot opposite the public street. It's a flag that's used as a common driveway for 2-3 other houses.
And the breezeway also?
What about it?
The little indented breezeway part?
Yes, yes.
Have summer pictures, I've taken some winter pictures, so you can get all the perspectives that you want on. This really doesn't interrupt any of the neighbors.
Anything changed from the original plan?
No.
Same plans?
Yep.
Everything good? Any public comment on the application? Brian, anything further?
Nope, I think it's fine.
Okay, make a motion to approve the application of Mark and Ruth Wood, 51 North Captain's Neck Lane for construction of a garage addition to existing dwelling.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye, good luck.
Good
luck.
Thank you.
Anthony Shadid of 7 Cameron Way for construction of driveway gates. Did I pronounce that the correct way?
Last one.
What's that?
7 Cameron Way? Yes.
What's that?
7 Cameron Way for driveway gate.
Yes, driveway gates.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Jim.
It's the first time I'm here. I don't know what it's, it's going to
know
be
what to
15 feet wide gate,
Okay, hold on. We'll
5
help.
feet high.
We'll help you. Hold
Let's
on.
let's help you out.
Hang
Hold
on
on
a second.
okay?
Hang on a second.
All right.
Is it wood?
Is it wood?
Yes, cedar wood. Clear
What is
cedar.
the spacing between the openings?
7 inches.
7 inches.
Yes.
Okay.
Oops.
White?
No, clear. It's going to be clear.
Natural wood?
Natural wood.
Okay. Ham?
Fine.
Brian? Ham?
I'm good, fine.
Motion to approve.
Thank you so much.
I make a motion that we approve the driveway gates for Anthony Shadid. Is that how you say it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
At 7 Cameron Way.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
you
good
so
luck.
much.
All right. We have left over the minutes from February 26th. Ham was not here, correct?
Right.
All right, so we don't have a quorum. Motion to close this evening's meeting.
I make a motion that we close the March 12th meeting of the Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Good night.
Aye.